And many people of my father's generation were very embittered by that experience, because we were innocent. We had done nothing wrong. We were just, people who looked like the people who bombed Pearl Harbor. And because of that, this government did one of the most egregious things, a violation of our Constitution. There were no charges, there were no trials. Simply because we looked like this, they rounded us up and put us into these barbed wire prison camps. And my father was one of the few, when I became a teenager, I asked him a lot of questions about that. And he said, despite all his experiences, and the loss and the pain that he went through, he said, both the strength and the weakness of American democracy is in the fact that it's a true people's democracy. And it can be as great as the people can be, but it's also as fallible as people are. And that's why good people have to be actively engaged in the political process, holding the ideals of this government, to the fire, and make this a better. Well, thank you for that, on behalf of my father. He was a wonderful man, and in many ways, I think he was a great man. And because of his good guidance, I am active in the political arena as he guided us to be. Both my brother and I, my father encouraged us to be active in student government as well. And we were both student body presidents, and I'm still actively engaged in the political arena, in large part because it's a tribute to my father and his belief in American democracy.
Thank you. I think we're all happy you guys compromised. Mr. Takei, welcome to Phoenix. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. We love Arizona. We've got a place up in the White Mountains as well, so I feel like I'm a citizen of Arizona as well.
Last time I saw you was...
If we can expand my voting rights to Arizona, I'll run for office here. Thank you.
Well, the last time I saw you, it was 1976. I was in high school. It was at the last great True Star Trek Fan Fest at the old Commodore Hotel next to the Grand Central Station.
Right.
And I cut class that day to be there.
Bless your heart.
I was also going to ask more about the movie Hell to Eternity. How did that impact your career, you think, since you did work with Jeffrey Hunter? And also, on a personal level, what that meant to you. And I know you're working on a play about your time in that internment camp. You can tell us more about that.
Well, the movie Hell to Eternity with Jeffrey Hunter and David Jansen and Vic Damone and Sesshu Hayakawa, the Japanese actor who got an Academy Award nomination for Bridge Over the River Kwai, was a wonderful experience for me working with these actors. But it was also a historic film in that it was the first Hollywood film to deal with the internment of Japanese Americans. The story was about a young Mexican American who grew up with, in fact almost was adopted by a Japanese American family in East LA, where I was born. And can you imagine a Mexican American being played by Jeffrey Hunter? So he understood the Japanese language and also the Japanese culture. When his family was interned, he considered his adoptive mother, Japanese American mother, his mother, and he visits one of the internment camps to visit his adoptive mother. So this was the first film, a Hollywood film, to deal with that dark chapter of American history. So it was a very important film. But when I wrote my autobiography, and the first third of it is about my boyhood in those two U.S. internment camps, and I did a nationwide tour, I discovered that the people east of the Rockies, who seem otherwise informed, educated people, came up to me and said, I had no idea something like this happened in the United States. In large part because our history books are rather mute on the internment of Japanese Americans. And so I've always had in mind the idea of turning the first third of my autobiography into a script, either for the movies or television. But I met a wonderful composer, lyricist, and he sold me on the idea of doing it as a musical. You know, people might think, a story on the internment of Japanese Americans as a musical, because we think of musicals as a happy, singing, dancing sort of thing. But we've had some powerful and enormously successful Broadway musicals that deal with serious historic issues, like Les Miserables. That's about the French Revolution. Or Miss Saigon, which is about the Vietnam War. And we've had some other successful musicals that deal with rather unpleasant subjects like Sweeney Todd, a murderous barber who slits the throat of his customers, and then they take the meat from the dead body and bake it into a meat pie, which becomes enormously popular. So I understood what this guy was telling me, that you can reach both the heart and the mind via music. And he created some sample songs for me, which was deeply moving. So for the last 3 years, we've been working on developing this musical called Allegiance, because it was our allegiance that was questioned by this government. We've had 3 readings of it. The first one we did was at the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles, testing it with the hardest, most critical audience, people who went through that experience itself. And at the end of it, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. And then we did another one in New York, and we got Lea Salonga, who won a Tony Award for Miss Saigon, in one of the principal roles. And it went over terrifically in New York as well. We've had another reading in New York, and so we are going to open next summer, not this summer, but summer of 2012, which is the 70th anniversary of the signing of Executive Order 9066, the presidential order that justified rounding us up and putting us in these prison camps. We're going to open in the summer of 2012 at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, which isn't that far from Phoenix. So you all come down. We'll open in July. And then, in the fall, we take it to New York and the Great White Way, that big wide stage of Broadway. So we're really excited about this. Remember the time of Allegiance? And remember the theater, the Old Globe Theater, that wonderful theater that sent many musicals that became big hits. The Full Monty opened the Old Globe. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels opened there. They were the typical musical comedy, singing and dancing and a little nudity in the Full Monty. It wasn't little nudity, it was total nudity. But that's where we're going to open, and it bodes well with all that kind of success that they've had. So y'all come down to San Diego in 2012, and then if you want to come all the way to New York, come to Broadway and see Allegiance with me, with Lea Salonga, and a wonderfully gifted composer lyricist's work, Jay Quo. He's going to be the next big sensation on Broadway.
got George maybe for 5 more minutes. We probably have 1 question, maybe 2 left.
I'll make it short.
Thanks for the pressure. As an out, proud lesbian nerd, I just want to thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
Now, I actually have a question. I have a small YouTube show called Nerd Chick, and my viewers asked me to ask you this question because I had asked them. Quick story. I had a dream the other night that was slightly romantic, involving the cast of Doctor Who. Deal with it. The problem was, it wasn't with who I thought it would be. It wasn't Amy Pond, it was the Doctor. Now, I woke up and to quote you was, oh my. Here's my question that I asked the viewers and they've asked me to ask you. Is it possible that being a nerd can trump being gay?
It's okay to be a nerd gay, or a nerd. You can be both, in equal parts.
So the question is there anyone nerdy enough to make you go, maybe?
As fathers say, there are always possibilities.
Real quick, first I want to thank you for all the wonderful charity work you've done for the LGBT community, the people of Japan, and everybody that you've helped over the years. Thank you very much. And I want to ask you about Super Ninjas. How did you actually get involved with that project?
Well, you know, it came at me in dribs and drabs. I also support a Asian American theater company, which is the oldest minority theater company in America. There was an African American company in New York and Harlem, but they went belly up, unfortunately. And so the East West Players of Los Angeles became the oldest minority theater in America. And I was at their annual gala dinner 2 years ago, I think. And I met these 2 guys who came up to me and said they're developing a series and they're thinking of me as the ninja master. And I thought, oh, that's nice. Well, thank you very much. Because many people come up to me with ideas, you know, that don't go anywhere. And so I thought it was going to be something like that. And then last year, I did a commercial for Sharp Television, in which I also used "oh my," because, you know, it's a common phrase, and it seemed appropriate. But apparently, people took it in the Howard Stern context, and it became very popular. And again, I bumped into one of them, and they said they're developing it. I thought, oh, well, that's fine. They're still with it. And then my agent called late last year and said there's an offer for me for this new series called Super Ninjas, and they want me to be the ninja master. And I thought, oh, so this is what they were talking about. So it was about the last 2 years that I kept getting word about that. And last year we did the pilot. And then, you know, there's always that pins and needles season. Is it going to sell or isn't it? And it did sell. We started filming this February, and we've been having a great time. In fact, as a matter of fact, we're filming it at Paramount, just 2 sound stages down from where we did Star Trek. Star Trek was on stage 31, that's where the Enterprise was, and on stage 32 was where the alien planet surface was. And 2 stages down is stage 24. They don't follow numerical order. And that's where our ninja dojo cave is. And that's where I inhabit. And I become a hologram. And my grandson and his buddies call me holograms. And so